Hello ladies and gentlemen, today we are going to complete our two-part series on UV unwrapping. Basically, I'm sorry for not posting in a while. That is because I've been finishing stuff with school and I've been working on my personal website, so make sure to check that out. And basically everything will be in the description, from my personal Discord server to where you can find other people to help you, but up until now there won't be anyone because I just started it today. But basically, yeah, make sure to check that out, and yeah, and my website if you want. You don't have to, it's not necessary, but there is a roadmap on my website where you can download this model basically for free. You just have to go there, download it, basically have fun with it, experiment with it, look how I made it, and that's it. Basically every week there will be a new model added that you can check out and play with. So basically let us hop into this series. So in the last episode we covered the normal unwrap function, the UV unwrap, the live UV unwrap function, mark seams and clear seams, and reset. Basically today we're going to cover all of the other functions. So let us begin by modeling something pretty basic. I'm going to just do this and this and yeah, this should be good. Basically maybe throw on a subsurf that looks like some sort of razor you see on TV commercials. So yeah, that's that. Basically I haven't prepared any of this, so I'm sorry. What have I done? Okay, like this and like this. I basically want it to be a little bit rounded, not all the way. So we have got this. Some a rounded cube which basically has like a chocolate top. This really looks like chocolate, but anyways, we have this and we're going to unwrap it now automatically. If you look at this, we go to UV editing and we select all of it. We can see this looks nowhere near to what it's supposed to be. In fact, if we go to view and overlays stretching, we can see that there is a lot of stretching there where at the place where we have this kind of chocolatey thing. If we go to U unwrap, then we won't see anything happening because we haven't placed any seams yet. So basically, how are we going to UV unwrap this as lazy people when we actually don't want to UV unwrap it by hand? So let me just quickly throw one texture on it so we can look at what we did here. Or what we are supposed to do. So we go to the shading workspace. I'm going to open up one texture I have on my computer, so I'm just going to quickly go to my folder for textures, and here we have like a texture I made myself for a chessboard. Looks magnificent, I know, but basically this will be enough for us to see what we are doing here. So if I just hit Control T with the Node Wrangler add-on enabled and make this a bit higher, then we can see that we have a seam right here, even though there should be no seam, and basically we have a lot of seams where there aren't supposed to be any. So how are we going to fix this? We are gonna hit U and let's try Smart UV Project. First we'll go here into the UV editing workspace, then we're going to enable this here, the viewport shading, and I'm going to turn that off. So basically we have this, and if I select everything, hit U and Smart UV Project, we're gonna see we have an angle limit, an island margin, an area weight. We can correct the aspect and stretch the UVs to the bounds. Basically 66 is the angle in degrees to which it will place an automatic seam on your model. So basically it won't be continuous. So on these edges here there will be a seam because yes, it is a rounded edge, but we have but this is because of a subsurf modifier, not because how we manually modeled it that way, so it won't take subsurface into account. The island margin will place these islands, as they are called, further apart, so if you want them to not stick to one another, I would increase this. This is maybe good for texture painting, but I will leave it at this, and area weight as well. Correct aspect and stretch UV to bounds is pretty useful, so I'll leave that ticked and just hit OK. Now immediately we can see that we have just some very minor stretching over here, just barely any stretching, and you can't even notice it right here. So maybe I should reset this to 1 or 2. Nope. Let's set it to 1. Who cares? So going back to UV editing, Blender crashed. That is pretty nice. After a successful crash from Blender's side, we can just set this back to 1 as we did before. Then go back to the UV editing workspace, basically set this back, Smart UV project, let's do it, and here we go. There's some barely any stretching, it won't even be noticeable, so it is nothing that should be making any problems. Basically we can see here that there is a seam, and it will be more prominent once we turn off the subsurf. You can see a clear shifting in the texture, so that is no good, but good enough for the job. If you apply a subsurf modifier right here, you can see it. Applying a subsurf modifier will help, but it won't get rid of the issue. And you will barely find anything except manual UV unwrapping that will fix the issue completely, so be aware of that. Now I'm going to hit U, and let's just press this so this is always enabled. Let's just hit U and light map pack. So what you will see then is that every face, literally every face on your model will have a separate UV island. So if I go into this mode and basically move this, it is all separate. There is nothing that will keep those organized. They're basically all laid out into the UV grid, and you can see this has a separate UV island, this one. Basically everything is kind of scattered everywhere, and that's not good. So I don't know what you would use this for, but if you need it, use it. As I said, I never used this because it is really not functional, at least not for what I'm doing, which is like stylized and realistic things, but maybe there is some use case for it and I'm just not aware of it. But there you have it. Then follow active quads, we will go to this later. It is basically used to unwrap a torus or minimize stretching, which we will also come to later. Then we have the cube projection, which is possibly the best method to unwrap this particular model, and it will basically it's like a box projection almost. So it projects everything onto this like it would on a cube, and because this is basically a cube, you will see that there are no seams right over here, but there are some seams, like if we look closely over here on this edge. If we turn that off, we can see there is a seam right there, and there is a seam right there. So it places as few seams as possible, because this is a projection method. It doesn't use really seams, it kind of maps it around it, and the sections where the things are disconnected are something like seams. They aren't really, but it is good to think of that way. So yeah, but we can see on this front we have literally no cuts. Everything is continuous, everything looks nice, and again there is almost no stretching. The only downside to this is that there is slight shifting, so it's not taking up all of the space. You can see some things intersect themselves, which isn't really good. We can do clip to bounce, but then it will just stretch it. We can do scale to bounce, and clip to bounds, but then it won't do anything, and correct aspect. So yeah, scale to bounds is maybe really good with correct aspect, and then you will see that it basically takes up all of the UV grid, but there will still be some parts that are sticking out of it. It's not the best method, but it's quick and dirty, and you can quickly unwrap boxes like this with some minor adjustments that need to be done right here. Also, one quick thing to notice is if I place a seam right there, like mark seam, and then UV unwrap it with the cube projection, basically the projections won't take into account the seams you've placed, so there is no need to place any seams. So let's clear that. Let's go to cylinder projection. This is a mess. This is a complete mess, because this is more resembling a cube than it is a cylinder. And basically, if I take a cylinder like this and move it right over here, go right here, and basically we have that perfect UVs, but let's just hit U and cylinder projection. We can see it's not really good either. If we take off these caps, hit U, cylinder projection, we can see it's a little bit better, but the cylinder projection will basically do a fairly good job at unwrapping cylinders, but basically what hinders you to just go E and mark seam, U, unwrap, perfect. So cylinder projections can be useful sometimes if you have complex models that resemble cylinders, but you'll always get this waviness. So cylindrical objects are already really easy to unwrap yourself, so I wouldn't see any issues with just doing it yourself with basic seams. Also, if you want to get really good, then you need to learn normal UV unwrapping, but I'm lazy. I most of the time just go smart UV project and hit that. Good enough for basically anything. Most of the times there are no overlapping parts, so I really am not facing any issues with that. The stretching is minimal, and most of the times even less than if you do it yourself. So yeah. Next up is sphere projection. This will be a mess again, and yep, it looks like the Batman logo, but even that, if you have a sphere, let us get a sphere, basically has a really good UV, and I wouldn't be able to do a UV like this, and you wouldn't be able to do UV unwrap like this, because you would have to really dissect this. If you had sphere projection, it already gives us a bad result. And you can already go to clip to bounds and scale to bounds, and it will give you something like something weird. You can change the other pole, you can change which poles you want to use. You can view it on the equator, you can view it along the poles, aligned to an object, and this is probably the best method. You can go ZY, it will literally give you the same result because it's sphere. You will always kind of get this issue on the top, so I don't suggest using that, but other than that, that's that. So let's go back to this model and hit U, and project from view is a really nice thing, because that is really lazy, and I like using this a lot. Because look at this, we have this view from up here, and we go U, project from view, and look at this. This looks exactly like this. Thing is, there is a whole lot of stretching, but just say you look at it from, you look at it from this side only, and you will only see it from this side. So you go U, project from view, and bam. Almost no stretching, better than smart UV project. You're basically saying, Discard this, we don't need this, we only want to view it from this side, so this can be stretched as much as we want. This side will obviously be good, but we only want this side here, so we look at it from this side, and everything else is kind of irrelevant. So it only projects UVs from what you see in the camera view. So I do this a lot. I just go into orthographic mode, UV project from view, and it's good. Except if you have to look at it from multiple angles, then you have to actually spend some time on it. But for like really detailed panels, where you just have to make a UV map and can't use anything like generated texture coordinates or anything like that, you just throw that on, and it will most of the time be fine. So if this doesn't work, then the Smart UV Project will work. If that doesn't work, just do it manually. But most of the time, this and this will give you a good enough result for most of the detailed stuff in the background that isn't in the main focus. Sometimes even this can give you a great results when the things are in the main focus, but basically it will be most of the times good enough, so you don't have to bother unwrapping it by hand. Although, again, I'm saying you should learn this because it is important, especially if you want to work with this. Now, project from view bounds is literally the same, but it will scale this to the bounds. Also, you can see when I project from view from multiple distances, it will always take up more or less space, and if I basically go up, it will go down. If I go down, it will go up, always in reference to the camera, but or the way we are looking at it. But if we go to project from view bounds, then it will literally scale everything to the bounds in the correct aspect ratio, because we have correct aspects enabled. Orthographic, we can check it, but we don't need it. Camera bounds, we can check it, but we don't need it. Basically, it's pretty self-explanatory, at least I think. Then we can go clip to bounds, so it will basically, if there is anything outside or inside, it will just clip it, so it will cut it off. Or basically scale it inwards, which you don't want. You don't want to cut out anything, you don't want to scale in anything, so I wouldn't use that. But scale to bounds is already pretty good, and correct aspect is pretty important, so just keep that on and you will be fine. Also, same issues as before, terrible scaling. Although this looks like some wood. This is really nice, this is a really good wood texture. Yeah, it's actually pretty good. Throw on a nice texture, this disorient it a bit, and you have pretty good wood. I never knew I could make wood textures, but today I learned that. Anyways, then we have mark seam, clear seam, reset. Basically reset, it resets everything, so it's kind of a little bit like when you go to let map pack. But anyways, I'm going to discard this and throw in the mesh. Let's go to Taurus, because I've promised you that. This I don't need. Now we can see we already have a pretty good UV map, and basically if you don't need to change it, don't change it, because you will never get a UV map as good as this one. Although if you can see, the angles are pretty good, but if we change this to surface or area, you can see that there is a lot of stretching, because all of these are like 1 by 1 areas. You can see this is really stretched. So if I throw on this material, you can see it is really stretched along this path, and basically it doesn't look nice. So how are we going to fix this, you may ask? It is not automatic. We can already go, we can of course go to like a cube projection, which will maybe do a good job, and it did a horrible job. I did not expect this, but also I don't really unwrap this sort of thing every day. So, but what we can do is just select this whole loop here, Control E mark seam, then select this loop, Control E mark seam. So we basically cut it along here and cut it along the inside to lay it flat. If we go like U Unwrap, we can see it kind of looks something the average woman has in her bag, but Not that I would know what they have in their bags, but anyways, how are you going to fix this? It is fairly easy. First, try finding something that has minimal stretching, then minimize the stretching even more. So we go to vertex selection mode, we select this one and this one, scale it along the y-axis. So basically, if we scale this to the y-axis of like 0, you can see it kind of clips into place like SY0, and you can see it kind of moves a little bit, and that is because it gets straight. It gets straightened out, so we can scale this on the x-axis to 0, and same with this, scale x 0, and if we then select everything and then mark this as the active quad by deselecting and selecting it, you can see it gets like highlighted over here. Then go here U, and then follow active quads, average length is fine, hit U, and then we get something that is really even. There is still some stretching, but you can see these are all squads, this is all even. We could even go as far as to hit F3 and then say minimize stretch, and it will minimize the stretch a little bit, although I don't want that right now, because this result was totally fine. And also what you can see is it is not stretched anymore. These are all 1x1 areas. Of course they are curved and everything, so they don't look as straight, but you can see by the UVs that they are straight, and basically they are all 1x1 areas, and they are not elongated like they were before. So if I go to the shading workspace and set this to like 4, you can see it a little bit better. So these are now nice checker textures, as opposed to the other ones that we have looked at before. Now let me see. Yeah, you can actually get a nice pattern like this. Who would have thought? But anyways, this is it. This is the method. These are the methods to go. Have fun, learn something about it, dive into it, just have fun, experiment with UV unwrapping. It can be funny, but it also can be quite tricky. So it's a challenging experience, but if you learn it, you'll have something for good, you'll have something for sure, and you'll know something that many people don't, because nobody really bothers to do it, since you can just go like, oh, object, it looks weird, but it looks like a snakeskin, but you just go like this and it looks automatically kind of good, but not really, so it's good enough for most people. You can make a donut. So bye.